Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Wake the Future. I'm Jared. This is Erica. And today's episode, we're going to be talking in a lot of different ways about truth and the future of truth. I'm going to shamelessly plug Erica's book that came out last year, AI and the New Human Frontier, The Future of Time, Trust, and Truth.
First of all, thank you for remembering the full title of a very long book.
Great book. Great book.
And this is a rabbit hole that I went down in writing this book because we know that we are living in this time of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. And what I really did in the book in particular was look at the last piece of this, which is the last D. I always joke, it's like it's not a drug, it's MDMD, right? Which is the digitally derived information. And that's kind of starting to be that rabbit hole with deepfakes. What happens when it's not just people creating misinformation campaigns, but it's AI itself really distorting how we think about reality. Now, for me, and you guys know, like, we like to take very complex things and frame them a little bit more simplistically. And when I started really thinking about this, and you know this, the image that kept popping into my head was, when like you would go to a carnival and you'd go into one of those infinity mirror fun houses. And you'd see like hundreds, if not thousands, of different versions of you, is like one after another. And it would warp your sense of kind of space and time. And I liken that to what the House of Mirrors.
Yeah, used very expertly in two of my favorite movies, Revenge of the Nerds and Tango and Cash. But I digress.
Amazing. Yes, used in two completely different ways. Yes. And what we're seeing, right, is that almost this kind of Hall of Mirrors effect, where it's distorting the lines between what is real and fake and true and false. And it's harder to really navigate this entire ecosystem today. And the thing that I think is most interesting here, and that I want to dig into a little bit more with you, is the question that I want to pose, which is, are we living in a world today without proof? Yeah. And so we also know, right, there are a lot of statistics out there, but this is a time where I think it's 73% of people believe what generative AI wants them to believe. And when you think about this whole idea of truth and what truth even means, and you layer on this whole thing with deepfakes, it's not just that deepfakes are tricking us into believing certain things. It's the more that we actually prove something or try to prove something to be fake, our own psychology actually believes more in its validity. So it's kind of like the emperor with no clothes on, right? It's called the liar's dividend. But I think it's fascinating because we're in this cycle of, okay, we need proof. We need to know that this is fake. And the more that we try to prove something is fake, we're like, actually, it could be real. Yeah. And that creates this kind of psychological cluster, right? Where, like, how do we actually prove any of these things to be real and fake anymore? Where it's not just about deep fake, kind of AI created imagery or videos, but now we can clone human voices. Yeah. We can, AI can basically mimic our loved ones. So there are all of the fraud implications. So this is really the spiral that I go down, because even though there are efforts, right? Some of you might have heard of watermarking, right? Kind of like a digital signature to say, like, that is an AI generated image. Yeah. I mean, that's a Band-Aid, right? And the technology is getting so sophisticated that it's leapfrogging any of our efforts to try to control it. Right. And in my head, it's like, what impact is this going to have on our own psychology? I was reading recently, deepfake fraud in organizations increased almost 1,800% from 2023 to 2025, like 1,800%. Mm-hmm. But then you look inward, right, where we are today, and it's like, what impact is this having on kids? We hear about deepfake bullying, right? So these are some of the things that I want to dig into in this conversation, because I don't really see a way out of it other than to start having some really, really critical conversations starting at home about how to start questioning, right, every single thing that we come across, every single thing that we are being told, that we read, that we hear, what we see, to actually think critically to say, is this real? What is the source? What does this mean? Is this trying to trick me?
Wow. how do I follow that? I mean, this is such a
You
big
don't.
thing.
That's the
There's
end
no
of the
way to follow
episode.
this. Listen, there's no way to follow that up. This is worthy of doing 100 episodes. I'm partially overwhelmed by just the sheer terror of some of what you just talked about. And I have like a brain boner right now. This is probably why you and I have had such a good relationship for as long as we have, because the fact of the matter is I listen to you there and I'm like, this is sheer brilliance, and it's great.
That is why I married you.
No, but you know, there's so much here to unwrap, and we're only going to get to cover a little bit in today's conversation. We like to try to keep this organic. So again, I just kind of try to pick up on nuggets that I hear as you're speaking. One of the things that's interesting to me is this idea that multiple things can be true to multiple people at the same time. And I think historically, the way that we sort of assign truth to things, it followed more along the lines of almost like the scientific method. It was like, we need validation, we need proof, we need to be able to cite sources. There needs to be a way. I mean, even online to some extent now, you know, if you go onto Wikipedia and you look at an entry, you have to take it at face value because it's cited. And then you have to, if you want to unfurl that, you look at all the citations. I think about when I was growing up as a student, if you wanted to write a paper or report on something, you had to validate it with sources and it had to be proven true. For the work that we do, we often have to verify a lot of elements of the actual data that we present to clients. We also have to verify that we are capable of doing the work as individuals. And I think about this and I'm like, there's an uneven playing field now because certain elements of our lives are scrutinized in ways where like things have to be validated, verified, and proved truthful. And in many other ways, that's gone completely out the window. So I see so many examples now, especially when we think about narratives, conspiracy theories, where multiple people, and I'm not just saying two, there can be 80 different versions of a reality. And we're now getting to a point where we're moving into a future where it used to be, nope, 79 of those people are wrong. There is a verifiable reality. Now it's maybe all 80 are going to be held as true at the same time, and there's not much we can do about it.
Yeah, it's
So
like a
that sounds-
morphing of the truth.
It sounds daunting.
Which was always kind of held up as like a moral standard that was verifiable, to then I think morphing into my truth.
Well, and the thing
And
is,
those are two very different things.
It's daunting because then you're like, for a lot of things that matter to a lot of us, if there is no longer an accepted the truth and it's an accepted my truth, does that mean that we're in this free-for-all? That basically we're in this wild frontier where truth doesn't really exist anymore? Or if we turn back the clock 100 years from now and look at this time we're living in now, are people going to be like, man, they were in the dark ages? I think about religion on this planet and the history of religion and all the conflicts that have arisen because of religion. I mean, if you take a table of people who represent, let's say, 8, 10, or 12 different religious faiths, they all have a different version of truth. Now, we confound that by saying it's faith, but ultimately all of those people believe in a different truth, and we allow that to happen unless there's conflict historically, but we allow it to happen. Like we sit here in the United States, we generally allow multiple people to have different truths when it comes to something like religion, spirituality, and faith. So what's to say that we're not going to start applying that paradigm to other areas of our life? Now, I don't know if that's a good thing, but I think that's kind of what's happening.
So I want to take this and I want to move it into kind of what we see happening from a media perspective.
Absolutely.
And like you and I have come across examples, right? There's so many deepfakes out there.
And define just quickly for anyone who may not be familiar. First of all, talk about what a deepfake is, and then go back into that not MDMA like the drug, but misdismal and information.
I mean, there's always been misinformation, right? It's like that's kind of, end quote, like, oh, fake news. It's what a lot of propaganda is. It's what a lot of conventional conspiracy theories have been based on. But the digitally derived information is new, right? Because a lot of the sources of misdis and malinformation were human. Now, you could argue that a lot of digitally derived information still has human creators, human designers behind it. Like
human in the loop.
But it's still so, there's so many facets of this. One, just deep fakes are AI-generated replicas of whether it is a person, an event. It used to be that like you could actually kind of use your critical eye and be like, all right, that doesn't look real. Remember when all the things went around and you're like, clearly that's AI because that person has 6 fingers.
Right.
or like that was kind of face tuned because like their arm was extended.
And I like to use real world examples of this. So for any of the guys watching this, I mean, anyone watching this, but for any sports fans out there who go on to, let's say, Twitter or X, I see this every day now where someone uses what is fairly rudimentary AI to basically take a coach or a player at a press conference. And all they do is they change the words coming out of their mouth and they manipulate the mouth to basically sync to the words that have been programmed to that person. So it looks like the person's giving a real press conference and they're saying outlandish things.
Yeah.
Talking trash about their opponents, about the fans, and you're like, I know this person didn't say this, but if I didn't know any better, I'd look at this and think this was the actual press conference.
Or like
it's
when
so
Trump's
easy to do
face
this when
was
politicians,
superimposed.
yeah,
Yeah, like Trump's face was superimposed when Alec Baldwin was doing all those impersonations
Yes.
of him on
Yes.
SNL. You know, there was the big one of like the Tom Cruise deep fake, the Taylor Swift deep
Yes.
fake. In presentations, I used to show the deep fake of the Pope, the prior Pope. And the whole thing there was like the Pope was in this like big like Uniqlo jacket with like a big baller like blingy chain, and like he looked awesome. The fact that it went viral meant that so many people put stock into that image, and it went viral because people were like, yeah, I knew that Pope was cool. I didn't know he was this cool.
You see these videos and the blurring between what we know is fake and what we know is real is getting less and less. So I saw a video yesterday, and a lot of them are done for comedic purposes or they're done as like satire. Saw a video circulating yesterday that looked pretty much real. I knew it wasn't, obviously, of Diddy in a prison taking selfies, going around. He was with Jeffrey Dahmer, he was with Jeffrey Epstein, he was with Harvey Weinstein, and you go down the list, Charles Manson, and it looked so real that if you don't know any better, or if it's a narrative that does blend with reality, so you know it's not pure satire, and you're not really trained to understand the difference, you're basically talking about a more two-dimensional form of virtual reality, where your brain is not going to know the difference.
Right.
And a lot of people think that's kind of cool. They're using it in gimmicky ways. They're using it for humor. They're using it for storytelling. The question is, for the average person out there who's trying to just figure this out themselves or figure out how they and their kids can have these conversations, I mean, what do we even do? It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, and it's used in like funny and entertaining ways, and then can be used in deeply malicious ways. And there's a spectrum, just like there is on everything. And it's like the entertaining ways, it's like, okay, you can have a celebrity say anything you want them to say. You can have your friend say anything. You know, it's like, you know, the silly, the gimmicky. Then there are a lot of the privacy implications. You know, Hollywood is all up in arms because remember the news of like Tilly, the AI actress.
Yeah.
And Hollywood's like, oh my God, an AI actress. Like, duh, you couldn't see this coming.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't see that, like, with deepfakes, like, this is going to come for your industry almost first. You tried to regulate this, like, stop. This is going to be commonplace.
Yeah.
Right? So then it's moving along where then we see, even in high schools, right? Like, a lot of high school girls being victimized by deepfake porn. Yeah. You know, them doing things where it's like absolutely ruining reputations. Yeah. It is moving into the mental health area. It's leading to some suicides. Like that is crazy. We used to think, right? Yeah. Like bullying back in our day was so just basic compared to what's happening now.
Well,
with
and you know, there are so many aspects of this. Again, we can't cover this all in like 40 minutes, but you know, I think about what you're talking about now with bullying and growing up. Yeah. I mean, part of the focus of Wake the Future is so that certainly a subset of the people watching this who are parents can start to navigate this, hopefully with a little bit more common sense with their kids. Aside from the issue of deepfakes, which is something which is, you know, existential and we're going to talk a lot about, I think one of the core components of this, which is going to affect all of us in different ways, is just storytelling, narrative, and you know, information consumption. So deepfakes is more of a visual kind of sensory.
Well, let me say one other thing though before you move there, which is the fact that I think what has really moved the needle is the fact that all of these tools are not only more accessible, but the ease with which, like, just your average Joe, they can wield an exorbitant amount of power that then becomes so distributable, right? And like through kind of the tentacles where, right, it used to be, okay, you needed to be a designer, you needed to have some sort of tech savvy. Now it's like any loser who wants to take down somebody can create
Yeah.
this with little to no tech savvy
Yeah.
and like have it permeate through a school, through a workplace,
Yes.
through a political
Yes.
system, across geographies. And then the biggest thing too is that before we even have the ability to respond, whether it is, again, politically, institutionally, organizationally, personally, academically, whatever it is, I think one of the biggest questions we need to address is it already too late because the damage is done? So it's like, how can we reverse any of these things? We're like,
We're not going to.
we're not going
No,
to.
we're not going to. Like, so with any of these things, this is the thing. These start off seeming terrifying, and I don't think my goal, and I don't think your goal here is to terrify people. It's to be realistic and pragmatic.
Right.
I think it's too late. I think it's too late to put this back in the box. So then the alternative becomes, how do we deal with it? And maybe more kind of profoundly, how do we evolve? How do we adapt to it? And, look, I would love if many things went back to the way they were. I'm very nostalgic, as anyone who knows me knows, for my youth in the 1980s, and people are nostalgic for the way things were. And society changes, oftentimes for the better. And that's progress. And in some cases, it changes for the worse. And we're kind of wading through a lot of both of those right now. It's like a centrifuge. You're just in an endless spin cycle. All this change is happening. So I listen to what you're saying, and it's like, I don't think we can ever put it back in the box. And nor do I think that people in like government, for example, are ever going to be able to respond in real time to this, regulate against it, put in guardrails, because the technology and the people building the technology are far more advanced. Like, I used to think about this. I already brought up Revenge of the Nerds, one of my favorite movies. I think this is the second episode I've mentioned that.
And it's not going to be the last.
Feel free to cancel me as a result. I know it has a lot of questionable and objectionable things in it, but I don't care. I grew up on that and I love it. Now, but I used to call this the real Revenge of the Nerds, like the idea that now power was in the hands of people who had technological tools. But I think that oversimplifies it, because to your point, it's not just the nerds, it's pretty much anyone. This is why a lot of angry, what are called incels, wield a lot of power now, is because they have a microphone, they have the ability to use these tools to basically wreak havoc on people who they think have wronged them. And it is basically vitriol digitized. And so I think we're in this very interesting spiral right now. And I think, again, and I tried to bring this down before, but I far be it for me to get in the way of your points, because you, again, sheer brilliance. But I think one of the core aspects of this, getting out of this multi-sensory and this kind of like deepfake video imagery-based future, is just talking about information. And again, coming back to this core principle of multiple people can hold multiple truths at the same time.
Yep.
Elon Musk famously said not that long ago, I think it was during the last federal election cycle, that, he was telling individual people, you are the media now. That was the thing. And that got circulated broadly, basically saying the traditional media is dead. You're the media now. You're the journalist now. And I hear that, and I'm always torn, not just about him and his message, but I'm torn about that idea in general. And here's why. It is very true that people have lost trust in what we call legacy media, the gatekeepers, the people who were considered to be the truth tellers. To an extent, and in a perfect world, the democratization of information, the access to journalism, the fact that individual citizens could photo document or video document things they see in real time and share it with other people, that's a tremendous thing. Democratization as a word is a beautiful thing. But now we're seeing the dark underbelly of that, which is if you basically deputize everyone, like there's no sheriff anymore, everyone's just a deputy. And everyone's been deputized to basically be purveyors of truth and to share their own version of it and their own version of a video or information, which may or may not be deepfaked or doctored. And now we're relying on the masses instead of the trusted gatekeepers. We end up in this vacuum we're in right now, this vortex, where very few, if nobody, is actually trusted. And if people are trusted, they're trusted in silos that are based on ideology. And what that leads me to believe is that it matters less what is true. People want certain things to be true, and they are going to find newsmakers, deepfakers, or whoever it is that can create a reality that fits their comfortable narrative. So this happens politically. It happens in every way imaginable now. So that's why 5 people can sit at a table, have different versions of reality, and be equally entrenched that their reality is the truth.
And in other episodes, we talk about kind of the algorithmic wormholes and the fact that the algorithms and these omni algorithms and what I call algorithmic feudalism, all the stuff, right? It's like who or what is ultimately in control.
Yeah.
Now, could I shift this again?
Shift it again, please. Feel free.
You said it before. It's like, I think it's very easy. And I mentally go there, right? I'm guilty of this. Like, I kind of get into my own doom spiral here. When I pull myself kind of rationally up and out of it, you can see both sides to this. Yeah. So can we spend a few minutes talking about like deep fakes for good by design? And I kind of rail against the statement when people say technology is neutral, it's just however you choose to wield it. That's becoming a little murkier nowadays. But we do have a decision as to how we take deepfakes. Can we use deepfakes to be their own empathy machine? Like, can we take war-torn areas and create a deepfake of somebody there who's sharing their experience?
There was research years ago. People were running a sort of a test. And if you actually showed someone a virtual sort of engagement with the life of a refugee in another country, living in poverty, extreme conditions, they were much likelier in the immediate aftermath of viewing that and being immersed in that to make a charitable donation.
Right.
So there is the idea that you can blend an experience that is sensory, two-dimensional, digital, whatever you want to call it, into like empathy, which leads to real life action. So there are definitely positive associations with this. There's the idea.
And then I was going to say, talk about for a second what you and I have talked about from kind of a behavioral economics perspective.
I was on a panel years ago with a behavioral economist, very smart guy. And what's funny is, you know, I often like to think that when I'm on a panel with other people, I'm one of the smartest people in the room. But I was listening to this guy. No, I mean, it's true. And we both are.
It is true.
That's why we do what we do. Let's be clear on this. I was listening to this guy and I'm like, man, there's like levels to this shit. And this guy was up here. And he was talking about, and I had read about this, and I've read about it since, research that indicates that if you show someone a virtual, and now in today's day and age, because this was years ago, it's an increasingly accurate virtual representation of yourself, your future self in different scenarios, healthy, unhealthy, successful, unsuccessful, it actually can lead to real changes in your fitness and nutritional and wellness behaviors. It can lead to real changes in your personal financial behaviors, whether you're risk averse or not. And basically, it's the idea that if you see what you can materialize into years from now, it might make you make smarter financial decisions or smarter wellness decisions. I thought that was fascinating.
And for parents making different decisions, whether it's for their kids, their families, for themselves.
Exactly. You think about it cognitively and behaviorally. You think about it from an empathy perspective.
Yeah.
And the way that this technology has evolved, you talk about Second Life. I mean, most of this has grown really in the gaming world. So the idea that you're in these immersive platforms where millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people are in the same reality, but it's an alternate reality to our 3D real world, kind of reality. That's where a lot of this was really engineered. That's where a lot of it developed. So now fast forward to today, where we have this layer of deepfakes on top of it. And of course, that's worrisome. But you think about all of this, and are we living at a time when, in theory, the power does exist to be able to drive empathy, to be able to drive positive behavioral change, as long as it's directed appropriately? Now, the question becomes...
Or I was going to say, even on the other end of the age spectrum, from a caregiving perspective, anyone with aging parents, like to have deepfake scenarios that you could work through to like reshape the kind of home caregiving experience.
I completely agree with that. And so then I bring this back to some fundamental questions, because ultimately I think the common denominator here in all of our episodes and what we're trying to do here is frame this with the right questions and try to boil down these massive, daunting things into maybe some tidbits and tips that can work for people to try to integrate better thinking about this into their lives. So I think about this and I'm like, listen, there's not going to be a guidebook for how to handle this coming from above. Government's not going to figure this out for us. They're not going to be able to keep up with this. So the question is, what questions do we ask as individuals? What questions do we ask as business partners, as husband and wife, as mom and dad, to be able to get at this in a way where we can have constructive conversations with our son and just all be better prepared for where this is going? Because I think, depending on our outlook on this, this can all collectively skew very negatively, or it can skew very positively. It's almost like it's up to us to figure out what that's going to look like.
Yeah, it's almost like going to a doctor, right? So I always think of this through an epidemiological lens. Basically, like if this is now like in the like, stay with me here, like the cultural zeitgeist, right? If like
Oh man,
everything,
epidemiological
yes,
and
yes, yes.
zeitgeist.
No, no,
I feel like
no.
watching Pee Wee
It's
Herman. Word of the day.
yes. It's going to get worse. So like, just
Yeah,
stay with me.
I'm with you.
If we think of our information ecosystem,
Yep.
right? Like what we are exposed to, what we are reading, what we are coming across, like a bloodstream. Like everything is connected, right? It's all going through this cultural bloodstream. And there is no way to control almost this virus that is going through all the different veins. And when I think about it through this lens, right, of kind of being this virus, for better, for worse, right? It's like some viruses kill you, some just make you stronger over time because your immune system fights it, creates antibodies. And then, you know, just as kind of a framing of this, what are the inoculations? Like, how do we inoculate ourselves against this? Some people might not want to, just like anti-vaxxers in the real world. They're like, I don't believe in this. I don't want to put that into my body or the body of my kid. Like, this is not something I want to do. Then there are those who are on like a very like aggressive schedule. And it's more like, what is the antidote? Knowing that like a lot of our solutions, you just said it, right? It's Band-Aids, and half of government, most of government globally, not just here, has no idea what the F they're doing because it's mostly older people where they're like, I don't know what this means, or it's the tech companies, or we can't get ahead of any of this. So just to kind of frame that, because visually, like that's how I always think about it. This is part of our almost subconscious. And like it's happening so beyond our awareness that it's even happening, that it's like in the spirit of wake the future. How do we collectively wake up and start questioning everything that we come across? And I also just want to put this out there too. This is also happening from an audio perspective, like deepfakes of loved ones' voices.
In every sensory way possible.
Right? You and I work with a lot of financial services companies, and I always tell that it's like they're seeing fraud skyrocket because it can be a deep fake of their CEO or their chairwoman who is saying something they've never said and like trying to empty money out of someone's bank account. So it's like, how do you even have those conversations in your family? And to even tell your aging parents, like,
well, you know, look,
right? They talk about safe words.
You talk about inoculation. Here's the thing. It seems like an impossibility.
And zeitgeist and
epidemic. I mean, listen. Sorry if I'm offending anyone, but you know, look, that's brain boner number 2.
Oh, brain boner 2.
That's a brain boner. These module where she just goes for a few minutes. Like, again, there are reasons why we've had a successful relationship and marriage for this long. That drove me wild.
No one's even going to listen to that, any of this part of the episode. They're just going to try to find every time you say brain boner.
Brain boner is going to be a term that comes up a lot. Hopefully no one minds. I think it perfectly encapsulates what I'm feeling right now. It's like
we used to call it mind candy, but that doesn't get it.
It's like a tingly sense of glee that I have listening to you wax poetic about this stuff. But there are a couple of things. I mean, you talk about inoculating against this. It seems like an impossibility. But then think about it this way. When email and the internet first, were mainstreamed, you had everybody, but certainly the concern was for our aging parents and grandparents, the lack of sophistication, people who are succumbing to scams left and right. Enter your information, click this link. It still happens today. We talk about the fact that, a significant percentage of the global fraud industry in those realms is based out of Nigeria. And you know that you see these emails come in or you get these robocalls, and anyone with any baseline level of sophistication now can automatically, there's like a bullshit detector that knows that's not real, this is real. And how did we develop that? We didn't develop that because there was a clear guidebook. It's like over the course of 10 or 20 years, we evolved. We developed an inoculation. I think the same inoculation is going to happen here. We don't know how it's going to happen yet, but I think humans are more adaptable.
Possible?
I do think it's possible because I've seen it. Like, if you took me in the year 1995 or 2000 and subjected me to the volume of emails I see today, I would have thought they were all legitimate. I would have signed away my life because I would have been too stupid to know what was real and what wasn't. Now I know. Now my bullshit meter is 99% accurate all the time. I think with this, we're going to have the same kind of evolution. I think that humans are going to sort of evolve in real time, co-evolve with the technology so that they have a better understanding. Now, that's not foolproof. So the question is, until we get to that point, or even if we don't fully get to that point, What else can we do? We can emphasize critical thinking. I remember years ago, I read about how a couple of major accredited universities in the United States were introducing critical thinking curriculum so that kids going into college would actually take courses on what it means to critically think and try to evaluate that objectively and almost quantify it. I don't know if you can quantify critical thinking. What can you do? Can you give someone a test and give them 100 things and be like, what's real, what's fake, and then grade them on that? Like, oh, you got 65% of those correct. You are a reasonable critical thinker. I don't know how we evaluate that and how we even systematize it academically. But if we have conversations with our kids where we make sure that they're aware that this is happening. And oh, by the way, I've said this before, and I firmly believe this. This is not me being Pollyanna. I think that our kids, with each generation, for better or worse, there are things about them that drive us insane. But I also think that they are generationally evolving, maybe not at the pace they need to, but they're evolving beyond us because they are digital natives. They might be able to teach us a few things about, Mom, Dad, you're so dumb. Like, that's not real. That is real. We think we have to trickle this wisdom down to them. That wisdom might come from them up to us. At least I have to hope that's the case. I have a feeling our son is going to be teaching us about these things.
Or are they already living in a post-truth world where those boundaries are basically illusions and they never saw things as real, fake, true, or false?
Right.
It's like just in one big cauldron
Right.
for them. And is that in and of itself problematic?
Well, it might be. I mean, but again, we're talking about a crisis of mental health. In a world where people can sort of craft their own reality and their own version of truth, is that necessarily a bad thing? I mean, again, I think about this as like we are in a sliding scale from what we once considered to be a very analog three-dimensional reality into a world which is very hybridized. Meaning like you can almost choose your own adventure. You can pick and choose. Like we choose to be more analog as futurists. We choose to raise our son in a more analog way. But for people who want to be more immersed in virtual and digital technology, and for every point on the spectrum, I think that it's going to be a little bit more of figure out kind of where you want to be. I see this now. Listen, as long as we don't have chaos, and again, we call ourselves with Wake the Future, we call ourselves, as an oversimplified term, kind of chaos guides. As long as we don't devolve into chaos, for example, politically and societally, which we've run the risk of recently because of all of this truth narrative, But if we can evolve to accept that there might be multiple accepted truths, but at the end of the day, there still have to be certain foundational principles, then we can live in a reality where maybe people who currently are uncomfortable with reality as it is can craft their own kind of offshoot of it, where 50% of it is a shared reality with us and everyone else, but 50% of it is the reality that makes you comfortable. And you know what? Maybe that's not a terrible thing. Maybe that's going to be a panacea for people living in a confusing world. I don't know. I don't have all the answers to this. The fact is, this cannot be constrained to 40 minutes. This cannot be constrained to even 3 episodes. Like, this is the kind of thing that would be its own curriculum over the course of like years. It's always
and you
changing.
know, I've always posed the question, does realness exist in perception only? It's like, are we only kind of in our own like perceptual like tubes, like the inner tube, right? Where it's like, what informs my reality is different than yours. And it's like these different parallel experiences. Okay, so to put a bow on some of this.
Let's put a bow.
Let's, spend a few minutes just thinking of what we can do. You and I obviously think a lot about this when it comes to our work, our family, how our son is going to navigate this. Remember when he came home from school and we had such a proud parent moment when he was on his iPad at school, he was researching God knows what. And he was like, I don't know if what it's telling me is true, because you can't believe everything that like you find on your iPad. And like we completely overreacted because we thought it was the most brilliant thing that he had ever said. And we're like, oh my God, yes.
But it goes back to my point. He was right.
But he was right.
He gave us a little nugget of wisdom where he basically was like, I'm starting to identify that certain things are BS. What that said to me was that either we're doing something right or he on his own is organically starting to be able to decipher that.
Yeah.
Which, again, we're trying to leave people with practical tips. There are no easy solutions to this. This is an intractable societal issue that we have to get our heads around. But again, I don't view it as wholly negative. I view it as wholly complex. There are a lot of different ways this can tentacle out. I think it starts, like all of these modules that we're going to be presenting, I think it starts with healthy conversations at home. identifying
And
the
healthy
reality,
questions.
healthy
Yeah.
questions, making sure that there's always sharing of information, curiosity that goes both ways. Again, this is not just hierarchical.
Right.
It's not, we've lived longer. We'll share wisdom with you. It's like, no. What do you see? Share wisdom with us. I think if there's a two-way kind of, and again, I always have to put in this caveat, but for people who don't have children, this matters just as much. Have these audit these issues with yourself, audit these issues with your partner, audit these issues with those around you. It's obviously very important, as Erica said before, to have these conversations with your aging parents to make sure that they are aware of what's good, bad, and otherwise. This is kind of minefield that we're entering. I think that we're entering a world of endless possibilities. And in some ways, that is unbelievably exciting. But as we're on that journey, there are all sorts of perils. Their mines are planted under our feet. There are all sorts of off ramps that can take us into thorny, what is it, a briar patch, a bramble, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. All of these different things, quicksand. I mean, I don't know, every visual you can imagine. But
How Peter Rabbit of you.
Very, very Brothers Grimm, but as we go down this path, if we can keep our focus, keep our wits about us, I think that the possibilities actually become very, very interesting. And I think about the practical again. I think about the fact that we've lost trust in media. We've lost trust in legacy media. I think that we are going to evolve to have a healthier relationship with media. I think it's like a phoenix. I think you almost have to blow it up to build it back up. I think that the way we viewed media is now, legacy media is getting undermined at every turn. But I think in 20 years, again, if we turn back the clock to where we are now, we're like, that was a turning point. So
Yeah.
here we are.
And again, even media in and of itself, I think it's just an opportunity to ask even the simplest of questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's like, if you're getting your information from TikTok, who is the TikToker? Right. Where did they get this information? And again, it seems so silly and simplistic, but it's like they are citing a statistic. Where is that from?
Right.
Is it verifiable? What is that source of information? And just doing some due diligence to dig a little deeper. And I think it would even be fun sitting around the kitchen table, depending on the age of your kids, right? And kind of doing imagination exercises.
Absolutely.
Where what we kind of did in this episode, right? We didn't script any of this. Let's think of some deepfakes for good. If you are using this technology, what are maybe 1, 2, or 3 really amazing examples of this? How can you create a deep fake to help spur sustainability initiatives?
Yeah, I love that.
And then at the same time, think of the most effed up thing that you could do. What is it?
Yeah.
And what are some of the, in our work, right? We're what are the second and third order consequences? But it's what are the potential ripple effects?
Right.
How could this impact you at school? How could this impact you and your friendships? If you're dating someone, it's how could this affect your partner? Whatever it is, just think of how some of these things could potentially tentacle out in different directions, because a lot of it just comes down to awareness, right? I keep coming back to our fundamental premise behind Wake the Future, which is just to wake up out of these slumbers and these old ways of doing things.
That's right.
And to just have awareness that these things are happening, and to really, again, ask the questions that the future is going to require.
I actually think that there's also another very, very basic, simple takeaway from this, which is trying to get to some form of objectivity. So everyone now is polarized politically. We know this. And we know that they're polarized politically because of some of what we've talked about today. They're in echo chambers when it comes to information, news, and media. They are being fed things that rile them up, that agree with them, that sort of, and they are polarized religiously. We know that people are ingrained, they're entrenched in their political beliefs, their spiritual and religious beliefs. We have a hard time these days getting to objectivity. But I think the more we can force ourselves or try to talk to our kids about being objective, trying to see objective truth, whatever that might mean, so that we can more carefully evaluate things in a very level-headed way. It's so important. And the reason I just thought of this, because you mentioned TikTok. Young people get a very high percentage of their news and information from TikTok. My initial reaction as a Gen Xer was to recoil and be like, that's awful. I mean, TikTok to me is a wasteland of craziness and bad information. I personally don't really use it. But that's my value judgment. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, these young people are uninformed.
I was like, okay, old man. No.
I sound like an angry old man, a curmudgeon. These people are uninformed because they're getting information from this platform that I don't trust, that I don't use. What happened to real news? What happened to real media? And then I thought to myself, there's another side to this. If it weren't for TikTok or platforms like it, a lot of these young people would be completely politically disengaged. But because they're getting information, and some of it is legitimate information, and some of it may not be, they are getting politically activated. They're getting civically and societally activated. So you know what? I had to force myself into objectivity. So if there's one takeaway I can leave you before we wrap this up, it's that as you have these conversations with yourself, not in a crazy way, if you have these conversations with your partner, with your kids, or with anyone in your ecosystem, try to be objective as you evaluate information, news, truth, what's true, what's false, what's real, what's fake. Because you're going to get to a better endpoint if you have that objectivity. That is something that I think is crystal clear.
I think that's a perfect bow on this. And if you want to play a game, everyone can try to spell epidemiologically.
And zeitgeist. And brain boner.
I know. So, do you have any other Revenge of the Nerds?
I don't. They're going to come up in the future. Yes, I am a meathead and I'm very proud of it. But no, this has been great. And again, we are going to touch this topic in so many different ways as we move forward. There's no way we can cover it in this amount of time.
Remember to like, subscribe, and if you have your own experience with deepfakes, drop them in the comments below. We are eager to hear how you are seeing this unfold and anything that you see in your own families. Let's wake the future together.
Let's do it. Bye.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, like, follow, and subscribe to stay ahead of what's next. I'm Erica Orange.
And I'm Jared Weiner. Thanks for waking the future with us. We'll see you next time.